May,
Okay, we're being recorded. Welcome, everybody. I will call attention to the special meeting of the Federal Way City Council for September 19th, 2023. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the
flag
United States
of the United States of America,
to the Republic
to the republic
stands
which
one
stands
nation under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and
liberty and
justice for all.
justice for all.
Councilmember Dovey, we're hearing you over the microphone. I understand you're
Recording
attending
in
remotely.
progress.
Well, I'm sorry I'm not there in person, but I'm there in picture and spirit.
Very good. Awesome. Okay. All right. And was Councilmember Walsh, I think he was going to try, right? Okay. All right.
Just excuse me.
Oh, yeah. Both, Councilmember Walsh is excused. Okay, so, let's see here. Study session, emergency management, we've got city council role, this is at the request of the city council here, city council roles and responsibilities, and emergency management update. Kevin Pelly, our emergency manager, will do the briefing. Kevin?
Mayor, council members, thank you. If you have your packets in front of you, I have the slides here in front of me. I do not have them up on the screen, if that's okay with you.
Is that microphone on?
I'm probably just not standing close enough. Is it on? Hello? It was on. Hello. Let's see, something I need to do on my end.
Thomas?
Check. There we go.
There we go.
All right. Do all of you have the packet in front of you?
Yes.
Okay.
sure.
Then we'll go ahead. So, council members, when I first got here in 2001, on January 1st, my first job was to assess the situation and determine what the most critical things were. And the things I said was, number one, if we were to have an emergency on January 3rd, what would we do? So that was be ready for the emergency. So that's the first thing you see there on that first one, the 2023 priorities, the EOC training and exercises that the Federal Way employees are trained and educated, and coordinating with our partners at King County and Washington State. And so for the first couple of months, that's really what I focused on. The first couple of days, as a matter of fact, making sure I knew how to open the EOC and how to communicate effectively with you as council members and with the mayor and with our partners. And then it was developing those partnerships that we would need in case of an emergency. Number two is determining what our requirements are, legally requirements. So I got a call. Some of you know, I worked my last 3 months in the Army. They gave me permission to conduct a fellowship with the Washington State Emergency Management Division. So I worked for 3 months at Camp Murray with a team that does continuity of government for Olympia. And I worked right next to the team that does the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. So Kim Mask at Washington State gave me a call on about January 4th and said, hey, Kevin, you're a year late on your CEMP. We gave you an extension during COVID, but now it's due. So I put in for, requested, and was granted an extension through the end of the year. So the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan was number 2 on the list we have to do this year in order to qualify for Stafford Act reimbursement. In the case of a federal disaster, the Stafford Act gives states and communities, counties and cities 75% reimbursement for costs during a national declared disaster.
Kevin, I saw a PowerPoint. Do you have the ability to do the PowerPoint on
I could
the
probably
screen?
bring those up.
Okay.
Let me see if that's easier. Yeah.
I think it would be best.
Why not 100%?
Well, the Stafford Act, federal government does not give 100%. This is federal reimbursement during an emergency. So federal reimbursement from FEMA if you have a comprehensive emergency management plan. It says you have planned for, mitigated, and know how to respond to a disaster, and they'll help. They don't pay 100% of the costs, but the government pays 75%. But here's the good news. But wait, there's more. Washington State splits the other half with us.
Oh, okay. If you don't have the 25%.
I probably did not. Yeah, log out and log in.
Yeah.
I mean, is it in our budget
Gotcha.
for
See if it's there.
25% of the next emergency?
Probably not.
Double click on it. There it goes. Thank you very much. There we go.
There we go.
Thank you. One more time. There we go, with Gusto. So yes, if we have a comprehensive emergency management plan filed with the state, then we only have to pay the 12.5% rather than 100%. There we go. Thank you. Thank God for our IT guys. So that was number 2 on my list there, the EM requirements, the CEMP, and then the Emergency Management Preparedness Grant. That's paid for the Code Red for the past many years. We can get up to 50 cents per resident. So on their census, that gave us about $54,000 that we can apply for and get. And I did, and we get it. And it's coming in 2024. So with that, so every year it has to be applied for and you get it. And then number 3, an annual all hazards exercise. Again, this is a FEMA and state requirement. So those are the required things to do. And the other 2 things I wanted to do in addition to those first 2 is a community outreach. How do we prepare our citizens for a disaster better so that A, they're safer and we save lives, and number 2, it's less of a strain on the city and our firefighter, our partner firefighters, our police officers, first responders, everybody, how we can provide better service to everybody else if we help our citizens prepare themselves. So those are the 4 priorities I laid out with the mayor and we were working on this year, the last one being a 5-year plan rather than going month to month or year to year. Next. Let's see here. There we go. So the annual plan, like I kind of gave over, there's a must do and then a should do and a want to do in that order. The must do, I talked a little bit about the Emergency Management Preparedness Grant with Washington State. It is a matching, so a 2-for-1. Again, we are allocated up to 50 cents per resident and we have to spend twice as much as we're asking for. So luckily, my salary and benefits are included in our emergency management spending. So with my salary, we can then match for the $54,000 we're eligible for, and putting that in, Washington State was very good at helping me submit that. We did submit for the $54,000. It's been tentatively approved. We're just now waiting the final approval, but it's been given the yes, you are good to go by the guy who submits them to Washington State. The other one, the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, that is due December 31st. Tomorrow, on Thursday, our Greater Federal Way Emergency Management Program is meeting, and we at the worker level are reviewing our CEMP for submission to the executives for approval. Just to let you know, Ray Gross and his predecessors did this every 5 years. So what I am doing is just bringing it into compliance with the 2023 requirements from Washington State. We've reviewed it as a team. There are certain things we need to change to make sure it is accurate with all 5 of our members. For those of you who are not familiar, the Greater Federal Way Emergency Management Program is an interlocal between us, the school, the South King Fire and Rescue, Lake Haven Water and Sewer District, and Virginia Mason Franciscan Health. And they signed on all the way back, I think 98 was the first one, 2002, and so on. They have updated and always been part of the Greater Federal Way Emergency Management Program. And they still are, and we meet every month. And then bi-monthly, we meet with the mayor and the other elected leaders of the Greater Federal Way Emergency Management Program. So this month, we're meeting to approve it at our level, and then next month, we will meet to approve it at the executive level.
And then will council be able to attend those with the other elected leaders?
Yes, you can, Deputy
Okay,
Mayor.
thank you.
We'll send out the invitations as well. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't ask to talk.
So, and then the last one is an all hazards exercise. Like I said, that is a FEMA and Washington State requirement. And we're jumping on, if you've ever heard of the Great Shakeout, once a year, Washington State does a duck, cover, and hold on drill, pretending like we have a Cascadia earthquake. And we rehearse, rather than fighting our instinct to run for the doors. If there is an earthquake, get under something solid if you can. If you are in a wheelchair or have troubles getting back up, duck in your chair, cover your neck and head, and wait for the shaking to stop. And then at that point, we in City Hall then evacuate the building, get accountability of all our personnel, let the fire department know if anybody is trapped inside the building, injured and unable to be evacuated, and then our engineers take a look at the building, and if we're good to go back inside, then we activate the Emergency Operations Center and move on with the disaster recovery and response. So for this, in October, we are going to participate with Washington State. We're going to give the earthquake drill here in the building at 10:19 a.m. on October 19th, 10:19, 10:19, and do our earthquake drill, evacuate, come back in. Then we'll participate in a emergency operations drill with Washington State. And that'll give us an exercise and let us know how well we respond. We then take a minute to conduct an after-action review, and then we can note what we need to do better and what we did well. So speaking of training and exercises, when we first got here, again, like I said, I went downstairs, pulled out all the computers and the files, and saw what the PATMAR room looked like when it was activated as an EOC. So if I was called upon in the first week, I could actually do what you guys are hired me to do. Then we tested the phone roster. We rebuilt the phone roster. It was last updated when the city team went to Emmitsburg, Maryland, back in early 2018, I believe it was, 2017, 2018. And since then, a lot of people have moved on. So we updated the phone roster and the EOC roster, did the alert drill over the phone. We did training on the 24th and 25th where people came in and reacted to an airplane crash at the corner of Pack Highway and 320th. The drill was a 737, ingested 2 birds on takeoff and crashed right here at our busy intersection. What would we do and how would we react? And let the team do that. Then we took those lessons learned, I'll talk about the levels of activation later, but we did an activation exercise on July 4th where we activated the EOC and left it in a warm status during the Red, White, and Blues Festival. We did an evacuation drill here in City Hall on the 27th, and like I mentioned, we're going to participate in the statewide drill on October 19th. And then community outreach was the third thing, the things we need to do after that. Volunteer organizations, our CERT program. If anybody is not familiar, the Community Emergency Response Team is a FEMA organized and directed program that's operated at the local level. And each CERT program must have a sponsor, whether it's a city or a fire department or something, a public organization. So the City of Federal Way has sponsored the CERT program here, and Ray Gross was its program manager. So I got the certifications to be program manager and became the program manager for our team. And back late this spring and through the summer, we did refresher training to bring all of our volunteers that came back. We had about a dozen that came back that had previously been CERT members. We recertified them, did the annual training required, and now they are the cadre of our CERT program. And we have now done the CERT bylaws and the CERT rules, regulations, and program. It's now in accordance with FEMA regulations. And starting tomorrow night at 6 p.m., you are all invited to attend any of these you'd like to. Starting tomorrow and running for 9 weeks, we are doing the CERT Basic program. Tomorrow is the first one. That's Introduction to CERT, a little team building exercise, a little stress exercise, where they build a dragon out of adult-sized Tinker Toys up to the ceiling. We'll be in the Forest Room of the Community Center tomorrow at 6 p.m. And I said, this is the first time the CERT program has held a CERT Basic in 7 years. So very excited to reinvigorate this program. The bottom line is that the CERT trains people to take care of themselves, their families, and their neighborhoods. And then, if they are able, they can respond to the city as volunteers that help relieve first responders who are specially trained. If you're blocking an intersection, they're trained in traffic control. If you're doing light search and rescue, we train that with the CERT program to go into the house. People remember Katrina and other disasters. If you saw an X on the side of the house, our CERT members are trained to go into a house and make sure it is clear and identify if there are survivors trapped inside that need rescue that they can't do. They can do some light cribbing to help people who are trapped out of an unstable structure. But they are not heavy search and rescue. Light search and rescue, they do light first aid. They're all trained in the AED and CPR, and now they're also trained in Narcan use. So I said, these are people we can use as the city to help relieve first responders who will go to things that are more severe that they are specially trained for. Does anybody have any question about the CERT program?
Yeah, I'm sorry, what room did you say it was in? Did you say
The forest room.
Where's that?
In the community center, if you come in and take a right, it's one of the first rooms on the right in the community center.
Okay,
Where the
thank you.
fireplaces.
Yep. Other group we got back is our Federal Way Amateur Radio Club. And I didn't know this, but they are chartered as a 501(c) organization to support the city of Federal Way. And they are glad to do that. So they meet here once a month. They're going to also meet here on Thursday evening. And they test our radios. They were here as plank holders of this building and helped to install the emergency radios down in that annex across from the little closet across from the Patrick Marr room, where we have 6 radios. We can talk to, we can talk to anybody local on the 800 police frequency or the 200 public works frequency that we can use, but they can also talk up to Renton, to the King County Emergency Operations Center. They can talk to Valleycom, the dispatch for the 911 center, and we can even talk all the way down to Camp Murray at Fort Lewis to the Washington State EOC. So if we have the big earthquake and the power is out and the cell phones don't work, the Federal Way Amateur Radio Club ensures that the Federal Way Emergency Operations Center still has communications. And Team Rubicon. Team Rubicon is also coming in on Thursday to meet with us in the Greater Federal Way Emergency Management. They're an organization mostly veterans, and similar to the Salvation Army or Red Cross, they can come and volunteer after an emergency. So coordinating with them to have more volunteers. And we've also have been National Night Out, Red, White, and Blues, State of the City, Farmers Market, trying to get emergency management out to all of the city events. And then finally, key businesses, faith-based organizations, and other partners is something that I'm trying to develop as well. Today I met with Costco and working with their general manager and team to give them disaster preparedness, emergency management help. And also, if it's in the works, we may be able to get an interlocal with them to be an agreement to provide us first with supplies in case of a major disaster. So as we need food, we need generators, we need other stuff to distribute, the Federal Way credit card would be the first one that they'd use, and rather than selling to just anybody, we could help secure the supplies we need as a city to provide for our citizens in case of an emergency. So again, that's just in the works, just started that conversation with the general manager, but these are the things, again, with community outreach, working to faith-based organizations. The Red Cross does not feed people. They work with churches to help feed people. So same thing, where the Red Cross in King County works with King County. In the case of a major disaster, they're going to be overstretched. So trying to make Federal Way independent of other organizations and resources so we can use those local organizations here if we're cut off or if other organizations are overwhelmed. So again, trying to reach out and see what other resources we can have. Anybody have any questions? I know that's a lot to digest in a short period, but if
Councilor
anybody has
Tran?
any questions.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a question regarding the CERT program.
Yes.
So I'm a member of the CERT program for the city of Auburn. can I transfer my membership there to Federal, or do I have to retake the training here?
No, it's all FEMA training. If you have one CERT basic course from anywhere that's federally recognized, and you're welcome to come to our meetings, council member, or Auburn, either way. We'd love to have you.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that you're working with Costco about any supplies we might need. Are you going to work with any of the other local stores like Target or Walmart? Because they're close, they might be easier to get to.
Absolutely. Also looking at volume. And first, just the gut instinct is Costco has the most on hand, and it's in bulk. It's easiest for us to transport and then distribute. Chef's Store, that is a hidden gem.
Oh, yeah.
That is second priority for me, and after that, we can look at the Walmarts. But again, it's what quantity do they have on hand, and what type of stuff do they have? Costco, I really like because they have a lot fewer items, but they have bulk of it. So again, if we're trying to do bulk distribution for our citizens, our residents, Costco was my first choice. And then after that, working with the Targets, and then down the line, the Safeways and Albertsons and other locations. But again, priority for me, I thought the best bang for the buck was Costco.
Oh, I don't disagree. I agree with you, but just wondering if, yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions?
Next slide. That's me. I keep on asking for next slide. I guess I'm used to that. If you're talking, you shouldn't be clicking. If you're clicking, you shouldn't be talking, was what we were taught. Next, definitions. Emergency, disaster, and a catastrophe. What's the difference? An emergency happens every day. Police, fire, they respond to emergencies on a daily basis. 2 cars crash in an intersection and someone is injured, that's an emergency to those people and the people that respond to that. Also, something that we had the fire there. I got a picture of the ship there, the Kodiak Enterprise. That was an emergency. And as you know, I notified the council and the mayor when that happened and passed on the information as soon as I had it. And we were able to determine what we needed to do as a city. Disaster is something that exceeds that. It's going to exceed the capacity of one or more of our departments. We're going to have to ask for outside help. Something like that is a strong earthquake, a 6 to 7 earthquake. The jetliner crashing down on 320th and Pacific Highway. That would exceed the capability of our fire and rescue and greatly overwhelm the city temporarily. A severe storm we may need resources from other places. So that is a disaster. Whereas a catastrophe, that's bigger. That is beyond help. There is going to probably be lasting impacts from that. That is something you can't just get together and overcome. For that, we're looking at the Cascadia subduction zone earthquake, the magnitude 8 or 9 earthquake, or Mount Rainier, a major violent eruption of Mount Rainier. Those are two in our hazard assessments that are on those infrequent but extremely dangerous if they do happen. So emergency, disaster, catastrophe when we use those in emergency management. So what does this mean for the city council? So in the case of a disaster, I will notify the mayor, or other people will know that there's an emergency happening. And I will also notify you as the council members. Email is the #1 way to notify. A, it's a public record. B, anytime I come into a cell phone signal or Wi-Fi, it's going out, and same thing. As you come in, it's going into you. In a major disaster, or like 9/11, after September 11th, a lot of cell phones, if you had them back in 2001, the towers were overwhelmed and jammed. And it's the same thing. Or the Lahaina, Hawaii in Maui, the cell phones were down, everything was out. So, but as you get to a disaster location, there's going to be Wi-Fi available. There may not be cell phones. But, like I said, the most reliable and public record that we have is email. So that'll always be my primary means of notifying all of you and keeping you up to date of anything. And again, an example of that was the Kodiak Enterprise ship fire, where the smoke affected the residents of Northeast Tacoma and Federal Way. And a response, declaration of emergency. If we know this is going to exceed the normal operation of the city, we're going to go outside the normal budget structure, and overtime would quickly overwhelm us if we have to call in the EOC or call in extra folks. If we need a declaration of emergency in accordance with our city code, the mayor declares the emergency in his absence. Council President, you are authorized to declare the emergency as well. and then down the line of the council member with the most seniority. Activating the EOC. A lot of folks can activate. That's easy to activate. The mayor, myself, any of our directors, or any of the senior members of our Greater Federal Way Emergency Management Program can request to activate the EOC. 3 levels of EOC, and it goes 3, 2, 1 from lowest to highest. Level 3 is a warm start. If we see a winter storm coming, the ice storm followed by a windstorm, I believe it was 2017. We know there's going to be a lot of down power lines. We know we're going to have to work with the power companies and get our public works and even our parks department ready. It's going to require people to come in off shift, stage trucks, all that kind of stuff. We could activate the EOC and get ready to declare an emergency and get everything prepared. Or like we did for the Red, White, and Blues Festival. We activated the EOC, went to a warm start, so that if there was an emergency, we had a gang-related shooting, if we had a bombing, if we had somebody renting the Ryder truck and driving through the crowd. All 3 of these things have happened in other locations. Being prepared for it to happen here, we can activate the EOC at a warm start. And then level 2 is a partial activations. I call this the Burger King Have It Your Way. It's tailored to the event. If it's a winter storm, it's going to be Public Works leading the way, and they're going to be heavy on the EOC. Correction, they won't be heavily in the EOC. It's going to be the other departments, because Public Works is going to be out on the road managing at the site of the incident, all those down tree lines. We're going to be pulling in our other folks from our finance department, from our parks department, from other places other than Public Works. And then a level 1 full activation. This is when we need everybody, all hands on deck, as we call it. A level 1 is everybody. This is going to affect city operations. You cannot do a level 1 operation for more than 24 hours without deciding, as a council and mayor, what will we not do for the city? Suspending building inspections, suspending code enforcement. Things we will have to decide as a policy group. I will bring you recommendations, or whoever is in charge. If it is a winter storm, EJ is probably going to be the one that is bringing things to you. If it is a 9/11 type terrorist attack, that's going to be the chief. I will assist them, and as the emergency manager, I will facilitate it, but I am not your expert when it comes to how to get the power back up and get the roads clear, and I'm no longer an expert on police functions either. So we as an emergency management team will bring a recommendation to the executive policy group, to which you are invited, so we will be able to tell you our recommendation on how to handle the disaster and the effects it's going to have on normal city operations. So that, again, goes to my last point. What do council members do in an emergency? Like I said, number 1 for me is keeping you informed. How we respond and how you can respond to your constituents. I know you get a lot of phone calls from our residents. I have to keep you informed on that and make sure it goes both ways. So when we have our policy group meeting, you're informing me as well on how the citizens are affected as well. So through the EOC, we will email or do scheduled briefings. Again, the policy group is part of that planning P in the upper right. That's the incident command system. If any of you who went to Emmitsburg and got any of the cool ICS 300 training, we go by the incident command system, and one of those is the planning P. So during the planning operational period, we will be bringing to the policymakers our recommendations for the next operational period. So council members are then encouraged, as soon as it's safe, to tour the city. So not being here in the council chambers, not being down in the EOC, it's what's going on in your neighborhoods as soon as it's safe to do that. And from a military point of view, we called that battlefield circulation. The general would be in the command post twice a day, once for the morning briefing, once for the afternoon briefing, and you wouldn't see him for the rest of the day because he'd either be out in his Humvee or his helicopter going to different points on the battlefield. So he knew on the ground what us as staff officers didn't know. We were taking reports, and that's what I'll be doing here in the EOC and piping up here. I have safe city cameras that we can put up here and down in the EOC. We have reports from the incident commander. We have our CERT team that are doing windshield tours. I'll get information on what's going on in a disaster, but I won't take a lot of time out of running the EOC to go see it on the ground. And that, again, is where, as council members and as the mayor, I know you are going to want to be with the residents. And then 3, continuity of government. As the emergency manager, making sure that as we go, the mayor has the ability to make the executive decisions for the staff, and the council members are able to stay informed and be able to pass emergency resolutions as we need it, if we have to go beyond emergency powers. And that concludes my brief. If you have a lot of questions, I am willing to answer any you have.
Deputy Mayor?
Oh, thank you. So this question that I'm going to ask has come up before. Excuse me. So we have cell phones. Some council members have a city cell phone, some don't. When the last earthquake happened, cell phones went down, and not everyone has a landline anymore. So if, I realize you said you're gonna contact us through email, but if we're out driving around checking things out, how are we supposed to communicate then?
And again, that depends on the emergency, absolutely. So if the cell phones are up, you're going to have instant feedback. If not, then we're looking at 2 things. 1, we have some radios, they're not very long ranged. Or 2, it's knowing where we do have either cell phone or Wi-Fi coverage. Some places are going to have landlines and have a cell phone, whether that's in the first hours after the disaster, it's just probably going to be word of mouth. It would be stopping in here as often as you feel you need an update on the situation. After that, we're looking at things like Red Cross or other organizations that are setting up Wi-Fi hotspots, running off of generators and satellite uplinks. So depending on the severity of the emergency, depending on how fast we can get services back up, it will be old school back before 95 when we first got cell phones, where we had to say, I'm going to meet you at the mall entrance at 6 o'clock and pick you up, and if you're not there, you're walking home. For you, Ms. Honda, it would be, how often do you need to come in and get an update and give us an update, and we would work that up into that planning P to work around that.
Should we as a council divide this city up as to where we go check on the community?
And that is something we can look at in the future, where we don't have council areas, it's all at large. That is up to you as a council if you want to break it up, or if, yes, I had looked into that and don't have an answer to that, but if we do want to break it up, you could.
Okay, thank you.
But I do think you want to be thinking about, council members have policy oversight, not operational
Right, right.
involvement. So that's where the CERT and staff and police and the drones become obviously very important.
But if we're gonna go out and check on the community, we don't wanna be checking on the same areas. That would be,
Again, that's something we can coordinate either the day of or beforehand.
Okay.
If we're coming in, and that's something, again, you as a council can decide on. If you, yes, and making the most of your time and going in 7 different directions rather than overlapping, and meeting you guys at different places on the National Night Out as we kind of go around Red Robin,
Yeah.
and doing the same thing in emergency, like you said, that could be wasted time.
thank you.
Council President?
Well, I think that, many times they'll have the mayor or whomever at City Hall cooking soup for everybody, because actually if you come to City Hall, you can find out what needs to be done. But I do think we have windshield, our trucks would be out there with windshield assessment. Lake Haven would be, so would ours, and going out and driving around, I mean, if you want to go along with them, then you'll get an idea of how the city is doing, but I don't know if we would want to be driving out, because I don't know what kind of debris would be out there, but,
Exactly.
or snow or whatever, but I think just coming to City Hall and then getting an assessment from there on would probably be a good thing.
Yes,
And
Council
making
President.
soup is always great.
Absolutely.
Councilor Tran?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to ask a question, follow up with Deputy Mayor asked about the cell phone service. So do you or the mayor or anyone in the city that have special access code?
Yes, we do.
You do?
I can get that for you. Yes.
Okay.
GETS and WEPS, the Government Emergency Telephone Service
Yes.
and the Wireless Emergency Service Program. And we can get you those cards and have them linked to your cell phones.
Great, thank you.
Can you expand more on that?
Sure. The Gets and Weps, it gives you a code. Two things. One is the WPS, the Wireless Emergency, anyway, the wireless program is the one where we register your cell phone with FEMA, and when you dial your number, it recognizes your cell phone. And so all you have to really do is dial out on your phone. If there is a tower and it's overwhelmed, it's going to look at your code and prioritize that. So if there's a way to get through, your cell phone can get through. As a city council member, I can make that happen. The GETS, the Government Emergency Telephone Service, is a card that I have in my wallet. And it is a 10-digit number that I dial, and then I enter a 10-digit code, and then I enter the 10-digit number I want to call. So 30 digits later, I fat-fingered 1 out of 30. There's a pretty good chance I've messed something up, and then I have to redial all over again. So I have them programmed into my phone. So I click 1 to dial, and then I was working with Pam on this for the mayor's phone, where you put a comma in, it waits, and then it dials the access code, and then you dial the number you need to get through to. So both of those, the GETS, the government phone, the 10-digit, 20-digit, 30-digit one, works from any phone. So you can pick up anybody's cell phone or dial from any landline if they're still working, like Deputy Mayor Honda's point. If you find a landline that's working, you can use that GETS card. The WPS gives you priority for any working cell signal to jump to the front of the line as you're trying to get through. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
All right, council, any other questions? All right. Kevin, great job. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, we will be in recess until the regular city council meeting at 6:30. We will have an executive session, no longer than 30 minutes, and it's listed under pending potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42-30-1101I, and once again, it'll be about 30 minutes. For purposes of this meeting, we're adjourned. Thank you.